Oh, excellent. Look at that. It worked out just fine for us. How are you today, Stephanie?
I am good. I am good, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you and the Bimini Bay family. A pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I thought maybe we can kind of just start about, introducing ourselves, how this whole partnership, started, and kind of like what we see the future of our partnership, and then change some gears into the whole Veterans Day holiday. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the MRA, and then I can get into a little bit about Bimini Bay Outfitters.
Great. Well, for everybody tuning in today, I'm Stephanie Kauffman. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer for the Melanoma Research Alliance. And at the Melanoma Research Alliance, we are proud to be the largest private nonprofit funder of melanoma research in the world. And our singular focus is how do we get funding into the hands of scientists and researchers, not only here in the US, but around the world, who are looking to provide better prevention, early detection, and treatments for those impacted by a melanoma diagnosis. We are also proud to be the highest rated melanoma nonprofit in the US. And we're also thrilled to share that 100% of all donations to MRA go directly into science. Since our founding, we have invested $150 million in research, and our researchers have had a hand in every major breakthrough, including the 16 FDA-approved therapeutics that are now available to melanoma patients. 15 years ago, there weren't any new treatments. Research was really stagnant, and that's actually has unleashed a whole new area of oncology for cancer patients. And we've been proud to fund nearly 500 projects in 19 countries since our founding. So at the end of the day, we just really want to fund the research to save lives for those who've been diagnosed with this really insidious disease.
I think that's so important to mention too, that 100% of the of what you are raising is going directly to the cause. And it's sad that we don't see that everywhere. But I mean, what a piece that you can hang your hat on with the MRA. It's frankly, I think that's what got Bimini Bay Outfitters so keen on getting involved with the MRA. Carol Jankowicz, our COO in particular, she was very passionate about working with a foundation like yours, and especially since melanoma hits home with many people at our company. So it was fantastic that you guys were able to put this together. Really, I was kind of along for the ride, but it's been a great ride, and it's been wonderful to meet you and your entire team. And so far, I think we've been able to create a good partnership. With how great you guys all are with the research side of this terrible disease, and how excellently organized you are at finding ways to raise money and getting that money to the right channels. Bimini Bay was proud to be a part of this partnership. A little bit about us at Bimini Bay, for people that don't know, we don't just make clothes. The company's been around for a long time, over 130 years, and it's been owned by the same family now for almost 90 years. So it hits home for us. It's a family-owned corporation that's been around for quite a while. Us at Bimini Bay, we have spend our lives in the sun. So when we're not in the office, most of us are trying to enjoy our time outside, which is where most of our clothing is focused towards. So that's kind of why it was such a great partnership, and a great synergy to have between us. Is we're already in the space where we're trying to build clothing to help protect people who are outside, and what a better person to work with than yourself and the MRA. We have a link in our in this live feed right now, just to show people our site, specifically about what we're going to be talking about a little bit with Veterans Day, which actually blew my mind. So I'm looking forward to getting into this when we start talking about the vets. But can you explain a little bit about your founder's promise? I think that's important for everyone that's listening and watching to really get their head wrapped around.
Absolutely. So our founder is Deborah Black. She's extraordinary. She was diagnosed with a very rare form of melanoma nearly 20 years ago. There's a couple of different forms of melanoma. There's what is known as cutaneous melanoma. So that's the melanoma that impacts 90% of diagnosis. That's the melanomas that you can see actually on your skin and where the sun actually has exposure to your skin. Her form of melanoma is called acral, and that is a melanoma that is often found on the palm of your hands, the soles of your feet, areas that are less likely to have UV exposure. There's two other rare forms. There's mucosal, which is melanoma in the wet tissues of your body, so your nasal passage, your GI tract, and then there's uveal melanoma, which is melanoma of the eye. So when Deborah was diagnosed with acral melanoma and went through her treatment, she did some research with her husband, Leon, and their family, and realized that melanoma research was stagnant. There had been no treatment breakthroughs, and the survival rate, if you had advanced melanoma, was less than 10%. So basically, if someone was diagnosed with an advanced form of melanoma, the physicians and oncologists were sharing that, I'm so sorry, but you probably should go ahead and think about what these next months may look like for you, and get your affairs in order. And so, you know, she did a lot of research and partnered up to say, okay, well, how can we change that trajectory? And my family and I have the capacity to start a foundation. And really, we want to get research funding into the scientists. And how can we find really unique and novel projects to do that? And as part of her commitment, she is very much, and has been, her and her family have been incredible. They have been personally underwriting 100% of all of MRA's operating overhead and administrative costs, because she wanted those who wanted to come into this movement with her to know that the research funding that a donor would provide, partners would provide, would go exactly and directly where it's needed most, and that's in the lab, and that's at the patient bedside. So her commitment and that of her husband, Leon, and their family is unwavering. We've been around now for 16 years. And that was a promise, because she wants to make sure that research drives us forward and not necessarily have us detract from that. And so, again, we're really proud of the support that we have from her vision, that of her family support, so that we can bring about additional funding for this disease. And it's been extraordinary to have a founder and a supporter and a board chair that gives you the capacity to go find where the best science is, and how do we put that funding with flexibility and creativity into the scientists' hands, so ultimately no patient is left behind from a treatment opportunity.
That's unbelievable. And,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that, they're still so involved with this wasn't just
No,
a passion project that unfortunately sometimes can get thrown to the wayside. It's become a livelihood, and not just that, a guiding light in a lot of people's lives, especially there. So, that's wonderful. And, I commend all of you for the work that you've done, and the passion that you brought to this project. It really is unbelievable. When you see people that have been affected, and then hear stories of how, the MRA's research and funding has helped them, directly. It's pretty unbelievable. So,
yeah.
you know.
No, I had a dear friend when I was living in Los Angeles. I live in New York now, but I grew up in Florida. And she was diagnosed at 42, and this was 18 years ago. And I think about, there wasn't a lot of options for her. It was a mole on her upper back. Her husband saw it and said, this doesn't look right. And unfortunately, the melanoma had metastasized and spread to her brain. And so we only had the joy of her about 6 months after her diagnosis, an extraordinary, extraordinary young woman. And I think about like where research is today, and probably the incredible options that would have been available for her today, like immunotherapy, harnessing your body's immune system to fight cancer. And so, Charlotte's vibrant legacy guides me every day in the work that we're doing here at the Melanoma Research Alliance. But I really do think about the breakthroughs that have been enabled over the last 15 years. And it's thanks to great partners like Bimini Bay who join us in this mission, and really help us expand knowledge and awareness of this disease, give us the capacity to create unique funding models for this disease. And likewise, when we're looking at partnerships, we look at like who's deeply authentic in this space. We don't partner with everyone. We do say no, but it was such a pleasure to say yes, because Bimini Bay, your leadership, that of the company, your pioneering work in terms of UV apparel to enable fishermen and outdoors enthusiasts to really have the best protection while enjoying the outdoors really made sense for us to join together and be in partnership together. Because at the same time, we just want people to live their best lives, enjoy what they want to do, but at the same time, just be safe and have amazing stuff at their fingertips to be able to enjoy those things that make them most happy.
Yeah, and I think that it's become extremely poignant after, the last 3 years of COVID and people
Yeah.
staying in and staying away. And it's nice that we can tell people, go outside,
Yeah.
get out there and enjoy all this, but be protected while you are. And, we can help you with that. So, and you're right. It's been a pleasure, and we're very proud to partner with you. Kind of going to change gears a little bit now, kind of focus more on the event that's coming up, the celebration of our veterans. So, we have Veterans Days being celebrated on Friday, but it is on Saturday.
Yeah.
We have some veterans that work for us. We were going to share some stories online with our veterans, and after speaking with a couple of them, they didn't just kind of want to be singled out only because while they're proud of their service to the country, it's kind of nice for them to stay in the kind of in the stratosphere a little bit and outside of the eye. But we do love them, and we love their stories, and it was fantastic to kind of dig in and learn more about some of the people that work for us at Bimini Bay Outfitters and Folsom Corporation in general. But where this all started was, I believe you had sent us some documentation on really how high of a risk our veterans are to melanoma. And it didn't, while if you, after you sit and you read it, you're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But it was kind of eye-opening when we had that first discussion about it. And, I'm kind of curious, like, how did that even come up with the MRA? Like, what was the guiding force to even think about, our veterans and even active duty military that are at such a high risk for melanoma?
Yeah, it really is interesting when you share that information about how our active duty military personnel and veteran community is at a higher risk for melanoma. Even for myself, as I jumped into this work for the Melanoma Research Alliance, I was like, I had no idea. And oh, that makes sense. I'm the proud great granddaughter, daughter-in-law to military veterans who've served this country with honor. So supporting the military and veteran community is just a personal passion point for me. And as we got into this work at the Melanoma Research Alliance, we are really looking to uncover all the different populations that are being impacted by this disease. And we have a really strong relationship with the Department of Defense and the Veterans Administration. And some new research statistics came out that said, and melanoma personnel and veterans are almost 20% higher at risk for an advanced stage of melanoma when it's much more difficult to treat. And so how do we start helping our military community with some better UV protection? If you think about where our military has been deployed over the last 20, 30 years, they've been in very sun intensive environments. There's, as you're preparing for the responsibilities that you have, particularly in theater, you're not necessarily thinking about, oh, I should put sunscreen on today. So how do we think about better UV materials for our military community that are serving us around the world? How do we give them better options and prevention and early diagnosis? But also, how do we help them if they've been diagnosed with disease, making sure that the treatments and research is there for them? We're also looking not only the UV exposure element, that is where a lot of people are being diagnosed, but also what we're seeing is an increase in those rare forms of melanoma. So acral, soles and feet, the uveal, pilots in general. And if you think about our fighter pilots, they have a higher risk of getting melanoma in the eye. So how are we thinking about treatments for that community? And we're partnering with the Department of Defense and Veterans Administration on some groundbreaking research to help serve our military and veteran community. And we're so proud to partner with Bimini Bay when we share this information for you, to say, is there an opportunity for us to discuss this and bring awareness? You are an immediate yes. And then having those conversations that you've had amongst your colleagues and partners at Bimini Bay, it just made sense for us to come on board and say this. This is not just around Veterans Day. This is work that we are doing every single day with research that we're doing all around the world, but we do have a specific emphasis for our extraordinary military and veteran community.
Have you found that, once our veterans are home, is it like kind of like, all right, out of sight, out of mind? They're, now that they're out of the sun, they're out of the woods, or does that not seem to be the case?
You know, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, particularly if we're talking about UV exposure melanoma, it's cumulative. So you could have one bad sunburn as a child. You could have had a really bad sunburn, while you were deployed in active duty, and not necessarily um, think about that until you might see a mole that looks really suspicious. And we've been having some conversations within the military and veteran community who are partners with us in this work. And one of a veteran that we've been partnering with, Andrew Smith, he said, I had the worst sunburn of my life when I was deployed to Iraq. And my wife noticed something was happening, on my nose. And so I went in. So I think a lot of times, once you have honorably finished your service, you come home, you get into life. There are other health issues that our military and veterans are really focused on, as they should be. But for whatever reason, melanoma, people, just like our conversation, we're like, I didn't realize that was a health issue, a health threat. But then when I unpack it and think about it, yeah, it is. So we're working to really help the community have a better awareness of understanding their skin, their health, to check their skin. And if there's anything suspicious, to please go see their physician and get treated. Because we do know that if you catch it earlier, there's so many more treatment options that really improve the survivability from this disease.
If you think about how like materials and clothing has
Yeah.
changed for our soldiers over the years, even if you just take a snapshot from like World War II to now, I mean, from the wools and all the heavy stuff that people like my grandfather wore when he was in the service to, even nowadays it is there's some lighter weight material, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's quote unquote performance or UV blocking, more specifically. And it does seem that there's room for us to have more innovation there, on the, what our soldiers are wearing and how they can protect themselves. And it's great that you've kind of brought light to that. I know that it's something that, it opens the eyes to everyone here at Bimini Bay. And who knows, maybe there's something we can do on our side of things, on the garment side, that we can help with all of that.
That would be
I was hoping we'd have some questions that we could bring it up, open up to
yeah.
questions to some people here, but it doesn't seem like we had many. We are going to republish this thing and repost it throughout the weekend, just so people can kind of know more about what's happening and